Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am so excited for a new friend of mine who, as soon as we connected, just instantly had so much to talk about, and I couldn't wait to share it with you guys. Kate Moyer, who is on today. Kate, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk inspiration and mindfulness. So thank you.
We just need to sprinkle the pixie dust around to everyone who's listening because that's what we're going to give today, right?
Yes, I have it right here in my hand.
Yes. So tell our listeners about yourself.
All right. Well, I am a yoga therapist, and so many people are like, what is that? So I currently kind of work in the mental health field. So a lot of my clients are coming to me struggling with anxiety, depression, insomnia, trauma, just stress. And
that's so much of our day-to-day lives. You know, I'm not sure there's anyone who doesn't have at least one of those things they're managing: anxiety, stress, trauma. Yep. I mean, I think it used to feel like we had to have something huge and major happen in our lives, but now it just feels so much part of our everyday lives that we're dealing with something.
Yeah, I think absolutely just the pace of our culture. And I'm really thankful that I also think there's just more awareness around it. I think people are willing
have a name to put to it.
Yeah. And I mean, people like you putting out this invitation to not feel like, you know, people can't talk about it, right? Like it's now, maybe I can get help. Maybe I can get support. If they're talking about it, then I can do the same. And really,
and also maybe something's not wrong with me because I'm experiencing these things.
Yep.
Yeah, I like to always say there's no such thing as positive or negative emotions. They're all natural emotions because they are all part of the human experience.
Yep.
And we stigmatize those negative ones so much.
Yeah, we do. I think what I'm learning as I work with people, and honestly myself, I mean, I have a story, I have a reason why I do what I do, but it's just learning how to let them work for you instead of against you.
Mm-hmm. Those experiences and those emotions, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the anxiety, anxiety can be a really positive thing. I think sometimes, it's just learning yourself and learning what's actually going on in your mind and body. And I think that's probably one of the most favorite things that I teach people is just connecting with them, connecting with their experiences, connecting with their body and their mind. And like you said, not this, what's wrong with me, but really like what's going on with me? What is
coming from that place of curiosity?
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things, and so being a yoga therapist, I'm imagining what that means is that you're helping heal those areas that you mentioned, the anxiety, the depression, trauma, any of those through unleashing the energy in the body through movement. Is that how you would describe that?
It's really interesting. Every client, every session is different. I will do the postures of yoga with people. I will sometimes just do breathing. Sometimes we will just talk about mindfulness. But I think the main thing that ties all of the different elements together is the mind-body connection.
I so believe in it. Oh my gosh.
Oh yes. I work with so many people who are just disconnected. I mean, I'll say, how do your shoulders feel? And they're like, what? What do you mean? And I can look at them and see that they have so much tension and stress. Like their shoulders are up to their ears and they can't even feel it. They just tell me, I have a headache and, I can't sleep.
Right.
So a big piece of this is just helping people come back into their body in the sense of what am I feeling? What am I noticing? Instead of letting it get to a place where pain is telling them they need help.
Right.
Yeah. So mind body work. Yeah.
It's so interesting because as a marriage family therapist, my training is through more of the narrative healing, right? Talking through the problems.
Yep.
And one of the reasons I love being what I call myself a mindfulness-based therapist is because so much of traditional therapy is helping understand what happened. Why are, let me understand the past. Let me try to heal the past. And I think it's all context and important. And yet for me, you're here now. Right? I need to know the information of the past, but I'm really curious of, instead of asking why, let's figure out what we can do to move forward, which is why my whole branding is a journey forward, because we're stuck in some capacity. And the why isn't always going to help us actually move forward. Having that understanding isn't necessarily going to give us the tool in the moment to not repeat patterns or to not get stuck in the same cycles of reactivity. And so it seems almost in an interesting way because we try to move through it because we can't fix it. We can't fix the past. We can have compassion and bring a lot of curiosity. And yet we also just want to heal. We want to feel better right now.
Well, what I think that I see over and over again, like you said, your training is more talking about it and moving through it. And I'm so thankful that there are therapists out in the world like you who are bringing mindfulness and bringing an attention to the body, because I really believe that's where the healing is. There's a book that it's a tough read, but it's such a powerful book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
I love the title.
Oh, yeah. And what I love about it is it's very research-based. I mean, he's been in the field of psychotherapy for, 50 plus years.
Wow.
And so he says all of our trauma, all of our experiences, all the things that we don't want to deal with or look at, they are in the body. My teacher of my first yoga training, it sounds a little cheesy, but she would say the issues are in the tissues.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, what is so powerful about the work that I do is sometimes, someone will come to me and they'll be experiencing extreme anxiety. And typically, this is not always, but typically people will experience the sensations of anxiety around the chest, a tightness of the heart, a beating of the heart, or a lot of people get kind of sweaty palms. So this is slightly counterintuitive, but not everyone, again, because I don't believe, there's one size fits all. But most of the time, I will direct people into feeling their feet and their legs, and we'll do grounding exercises. And they're going, no, but my chest is so tight. And I'm like, I know. Could we just move the feet? Could we do some, work in the legs? And then all of a sudden, they've shifted their attention away from the tightness in the chest. Now we're in the lower body, and the lower body is what helps us feel grounded.
Yes.
So just bringing the attention away from that immediate, tightness, it starts to kind of slow it down a bit.
And I think that, and I do the same thing. So I love to hear that. Oh, well, I'm doing this too.
Yay!
But the thing is, for some people, it feels like by intentionally placing the awareness and attention someplace else, that you're actually in denial or resistance of the anxiety in the chest. And I don't believe that to be true, because we're not ignoring it. No. We're not saying this isn't here. We're just saying by focusing on it is actually increasing the anxiety rather than dissipating it and letting us relate to it in a different way.
Yes. One of my favorite tips and tools that I did not come up with is from Dan Siegel.
Oh, I love him.
Right?
I have the biggest nerd crush on him, and I've met him so many times. And
that is amazing.
And oh my God, he is so brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I'm referring to, which I'm sure you're going to know, his flip the lid model.
Yes.
Which is saying, and so I'll bring that into like my own work. He's saying.
So for those who don't know what the flip the lid model is, describe it so everyone can get a visual.
Absolutely. So he says, take your hand, and he says your arm, let's imagine this is like a model of the brain. So your arm kind of arm coming up into the hand would be
like from the elbow up. Yeah.
Yep.
Like
the brainstem. Yeah. And then if you took your thumb across like the center of your palm, that would be, referenced to be the limbic system. And that's where that emotional reactivity is. That's the fight, flight, freeze. And then he says, take your forefingers over your thumb. And that would be the prefrontal cortex of the brain.
Your knuckles are, like in your
yes.
Yep.
Yes.
The part of our brain that's right at our forehead.
Oh, yeah. And that is, the higher functioning part of the brain, the ability to use logic, to have perspective, to think things through.
That's where our tools reside. All of that logic and reason.
Yes. You are exactly right. So when we are experiencing anxiety or we're triggered or when we are stuck in the stress response, we, just like you said, you mentioned, people are like, but I have to pay attention to the anxiety in my chest. Don't direct me elsewhere. Well, the problem is you can't think clearly. You won't have perspective until you are out of that reactive state, So he says you have to be able to focus, your attention to getting back that prefrontal cortex. Now, why does that matter with what I do? Because in order to be able to have that, rational, logical, problem-solving part of our minds, we have to get back to the prefrontal cortex. Now, how that goes with my work is when we're in the stress response, right, we don't have access to that higher functioning part of the brain. So a lot of what I teach is what's called accessing the parasympathetic nervous system. So in layman's terms, it's teaching your body how to calm back down. Right. Whether that's through diaphragmatic breathing, whether that's through a certain yoga posture, whether that's through a visualization. Everyone is different, but the main thing is to help people engage this amazing, natural, calming quality that every single body has.
It is amazing. And, when I studied under John Kabat-Zinn, being trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Yes.
I've been on retreat with him. And, he says, this is the easiest thing to do, but the hardest thing to remember to do.
Yep. You're exactly right.
And, because like you said, we all have that natural ability. Our body is designed to be able to calm itself down. We just have to know it's possible to access it, even when we feel like it's inaccessible.
Yeah. And I think another huge thing, just from working with people, and again, if I'm honest in my own life, this idea of, mindfulness or stress reduction, it's not a one-time quick fix.
It's not a one and done.
No,
well, because we're going to keep getting triggered. We're going to keep getting reactivated.
So right. Yep. It's a practice.
Oh, 100%.
It is a practice. And a lot of times I will, I'll get clients and they kind of are in crisis. They've been having panic attacks or they can't sleep, so they are coming to me for a quick fix. And they don't like when I say, this might take a little bit of time, but I describe it to them like a bank account, like deposits and withdrawals. If you just went through a stressful, divorce, or if you went through an illness, or you've been in a really stressful situation for a prolonged period of time, like you've had a lot of withdrawals, you're in the red.
Right.
You cannot expect to make one deposit and be out of it unless you're like a billionaire, and most of us aren't,
An emotional billionaire.
Exactly. I
want to be an emotional billionaire to get myself out of it when I'm stuck.
Yeah. Well, I believe we all can be, but it is little deposits consistently over time.
Yeah. And people often do want the quick fix and they don't want to have to keep working at it because it's hard to work at it, but it's also harder to stay stuck.
You're exactly right.
I know I've shared this in earlier podcast episodes, but I think it fits so much into this. I just wanted to share this visual because I'm a huge person that believe when I can visualize something, I learn it. And, when you talk about this being a practice and one of the ways that I like to describe this is through the visual of a snowy field. And we have a particular habit and pattern that gets so well established. So imagine a snowy field and there's one path across the snow. And it's so well established that the snow embankments are like 10 feet high. Like it's literally the only way across. But the problem is you don't like the destination of where that path takes you.
Yep.
But you think, but this is the only way. And yet we keep taking it because it's that we believe to be the only way. But through awareness, which to me is just mindfulness, period, is just being aware. Through awareness, if we consciously start a new path, and if we each and every time we're at this crossroads of how do I respond versus react to whatever is arising externally or internally, and I start taking footsteps. And those footsteps at first are going to be super hard because the snow might be thick. But if each and every time I consciously take those new footsteps, those footsteps will eventually become a well-established path. And over time, the more we walk that path, not only are we going to a destination by intention, going to lead us where we want to be emotionally, experientially, spiritually, physically, mentally. Also, what's going to happen is that other path will get snowed over. And we've now established a new habit and pattern to respond to all these things you're talking about.
I love
and
that.
So now that visual, why I love it is because that's literally what we're doing in our brain to rewire a new habit, a new pattern. That's neuroplasticity.
Yep.
So
I love that.
When people say, and I'm sure you get this too, of how is taking these deep breaths going to work? Why should this posture or focusing on my feet make a difference? Because in the moment it seems maybe silly or undermining, like you said, the anxiety in my chest. Well, the verbiage I will use is because you're establishing a new pattern to respond to it.
Yep.
And we're shifting in the body and in the brain. It's amazing to me.
It's really amazing. And again, I think my work is helping people feel like, I love that visual, the old patterns, the ruts, whether that be, when I get angry, I yell, or, whatever that is. What I try to help people is feel it in the body. To me, that's sometimes easier to recognize. It's easier to recognize, how it feels when you get angry than you said something terrible and then it's too late.
Right.
So trying to get people to learn the habits in their body, like, oh, when I start to feel worried, I tighten my jaw, so that they can go, uh-oh, I'm tightening my jaw. What's going on?
Right.
There's
the
two ways
sensations in our body can give us information.
You are exactly right. That's it. And just like we all have patterns in the mind, we all have patterns in the body.
Yes.
Like so many stomach issues, whether it's IBS or just, chronic upset stomach, like a lot of times that's stress. And so if you can start to feel, uh-oh, my stomach is getting that feeling. Okay, let me pause. Let me reflect. What am I stressed about? Mm-hmm. Instead of just popping a pill, which that's a whole nother tangent. I won't get on that. And sometimes that's necessary, but like our body is constantly cluing us in if we would pause and listen to the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think you and I could talk for hours about this. And so I might just have to have you on again so we can just have so much more conversation, because I think this is really crucial for people to understand. It is possible to get unstuck from these physiological symptoms. And then when they truly understand, wait a second, this physiological response is simply my brain's fight, flight, freeze reacting in a very evolutionary way.
Yep.
And that as soon, and here's the tricky thing that I also will describe to the clients I work with, is that fight, flight, freeze in our brain is a result of some perceived or real threat.
Yep.
And the brain trying to protect us. And yet the key there, I think, for our everyday life is the perceived threat. So we could have a thought and believe it, and the body doesn't know the difference from the thought we believed to an actual fear or an actual threat.
Yeah.
And so we get the same physiological response by a mere thought. And when we don't clue into, oh, here's that sensation again. What was I, like you said, am I stressed about? And being curious, we now think something's wrong with us. And we now have a pathology or a diagnosis, which medication may or may not fix, right?
Yep.
So
and I think with that is, you mentioned it earlier, just this intention of compassion.
Yeah.
You know, like being kind to yourself instead of judging or, you know, getting mad at yourself or going on a tangent of, oh my God, this, you know, getting lost in the story. Something that I think is so fascinating, and now science is proving it. So, you know, we have all these positive hormones and chemicals that are secreted. You know, we know, we all have heard of the runner's high. Right. That endorphins.
I don't have runner's high.
No, I don't either. I've heard of it. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So now, you know, there's science that says a 20-second hug, now it has to be 20 seconds, will produce oxytocin in the brain, which is a feel-good hormone. Now, here's what's really strange but powerful. And y'all, you know, you probably don't want to do this in public. I mean, if you don't care, awesome. But if you hug yourself, if you wrap your arms around, you know, like one arm around your upper arm and the other hand kind of around your upper ribs, and you hold that for 20 seconds, oxytocin will be secreted. So you get that feel-good hormone. That's how powerful the body is.
So what you're saying with that, Kay, is we can absolutely heal ourselves.
Oh, yes, we can.
I love that self-hug as healing.
Yep. Because just like you said, the brain doesn't know the difference between real or perceived threat. Like if a tiger is going to like run into your house, right, or you missed a deadline. Well, the brain and the body, it's the same for the positive. The body wants contact. It knows that when there's an embrace and physical contact, that oxytocin is produced. Well, the same thing, touch is touch. You know what I mean? Like your body feels that embrace and it does the same thing. So it can be for the negative or the positive.
I love that. I love that. What a wonderful tip to provide our listeners of some really actionable step they can take right now to be able to start shifting the hormonal response in their body and start shifting the brain. You know, I want to go back 1 second before we move ahead, is when you talked about grounding into the feet.
Yeah.
It's so overly simplified and yet so incredibly powerful. And I recently saw a documentary on mindfulness in America. And do you know who the singer Jewel is?
Yes. Okay. Oh my gosh. I grew up listening to her. Love her.
Okay. So she was featured in this documentary of how she started to develop a mindfulness practice. And she's someone who, I don't know her whole story verbatim, but I know that she had a lot of trauma. I think her father was abusive, and I believe maybe her mother shot her father in self-defense. Like it was very, very, very traumatic childhood. And she has one of her most famous songs, and I don't know the name of it, but the line of the song is, "These hands are strong, I know." Like it's about her hands. She described in this documentary looking at her hands and touching her fingertips to one another was how she started to heal her own trauma. And that whole song was the focus of her hands. And it's so simple and so beautiful how just our intentional focus of attention, grounding in our body, can take our mind away from the stressors, away from the overwhelming thoughts, away from that pain, and start to channel that. So I loved that, hearing that story, because we talk about grounding into the feet, and I love the idea of the earth supporting us and being physically supported. But we can do it in so many ways. So I love that this is the intention of your work.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is the mind and the body. When they feel threatened, they want safety.
Yes.
So it's, what can you do to make yourself feel safe? Some people, they put a weighted blanket over the tops of their legs. Some people will, go to a part of their house where it's, quiet and cozy. Like, the question is, how do you get back to a place of safety?
So like a silly question. So how do you do it?
Oh, I was just gonna, yeah. I mean, I have learned through these different practices that, depending on what the emotion is, I'll use different things. But as silly as it sounds, a warm cup of tea is very comforting and soothing.
That's not silly at all. Oh my gosh. Mine, if I'm being vulnerable and I'm sharing, mine is 10 times sillier than that.
Let me hear it.
Okay, you can't judge though, so no one here can judge me, but this is me being authentic. Is I, at 41 years old, I still have my teddy bear from when I was a kid.
Oh, girl.
And there is something about being able to go snuggle my bear that I am instantly in a place of safety and security. And to me, smells are very soothing.
Yep.
And I don't think you ever have to be too old to have a lovey or a snuggly. And I don't think it's about, being secure or not. It's about knowing I have something tangible. If I need to just slow down or calm down. And I think it's a very healthy attachment to my inner child.
So I will hopefully make you feel better. I have a bag of stuffed animals that I use with clients for that very reason.
Yeah, I think it's actually really healthy to tap into when you were a kid, what made you feel safe? What made you feel secure? When you couldn't sleep at night, what did you do? And yet we sometimes as an adult think, oh, that's a childish thing to do. And I actually think it's deep wisdom to know if I can go touch something or smell something or cuddle up against something, I am inducing some inner safety and security. And I don't think it has anything to do with age. And in fact, I'm working with a client right now and we're doing some reparenting work of her younger self when some traumas occurred. And I encouraged her, if she had a lovey from when she was a kid at 25 years old, to go give it to her parents' house and go get it and allow herself to feel safe and secure in the way that we all want to feel, right?
Well, and my thing is, if it works, then who cares?
Yes. Okay, so no one's judging me and my bear?
No, I have that little fuzzy pink unicorn that I use. It's adorable.
Perfect. So I know one of the things that you've shared with me is you've created these amazing cards called ABCs of Happy. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I taught mindfulness and meditation for years, and my students would come up to me and they would be like, Kate, what's that thing you said about breathing? Or what's that thing you said about listening to the body? I'm really good when I'm sitting on the meditation cushion with you, but when I get home, my husband or my wife or my spouse is annoying me or this, and all my calm goes away. So I must have been thinking about that. And gosh, almost 5 years now, this came to me in a dream, and I never remember my dreams. So I just really...
intervention there.
Yes, I really believe so. And this idea came to me. Now, it took me 9 months to actually create it because I'm a songwriter. I'm not a writer. But I wrote the ABCs of Happy.
You're a writer. Don't cut yourself short. You are a writer.
Yeah. Well, I only knew how to write music. So it was the first time that I shifted my writing, which was
it's really a different language.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote to the ABCs of Happy, and what it is it's little cards, one for every letter of the alphabet. And every card, every letter has a word or an intention and then a practice.
Oh, I love that.
So that you can have something tangible. Like, for example, the first one, letter A, is for acceptance. So you take that card and you practice it for however long you feel like you need to, whether it's a week or 2 weeks. If I'm honest, I practice the letter A for 4 months because I can tend to be stubborn. So whenever you get up in the morning, you set the card somewhere you're going to see it. And that is your intention. And as you go throughout the day, when you encounter a moment of stress, you stop, you take a breath, and you go back to that letter. And in the moment you go, okay, how in this moment can I practice acceptance? And that's just one card. So the intention is by the time you get through all of the cards, which might take you a year,
sure,
you will have 26 tools to call upon in a moment of stress.
I love that so much. So what are your top 3 favorite letters in your card deck?
Well, favorite or challenging?
I guess the one that has helped you the most, and that's probably because it was the one that was most challenging to do.
Yeah, so acceptance was definitely one. And then P for perfect, which I'm actually practicing right now. And that is just basically there's no such thing as perfect. And whenever you feel that perfectionistic tendency, the practice is reminding you of progress and process.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, to let go of this, but it has to be like this, but it has to, because that causes a lot of stress.
Yes.
Because over and over and over, nothing is perfect. And there's no such thing as perfect. It's my expectation of how someone or something should be. Well,
and you just took the words out of my mouth, that perception of perfection is based on a thought, which is based on nothing more than a hope, which is based on nothing more than a thought or a comparison against someone else. So it comes back to the overwhelming thoughts take over so much of our psyche and of our experience in our body.
Yep.
Okay, so acceptance, perfect. What was the third one that either your favorite or most challenging?
This one I actually really enjoyed. So it's so simple. N is for notice. And I was fascinated by all of the things that were in my everyday life that I never saw, that I never paid attention to. At the time I was practicing it, I would go for a walk with my dog at this little park, and I would just see the most beautiful things that I would never notice before because I was just so focused on the walk. I would look down at the
tunnel visioned, right? Yeah.
You're exactly right. And so when I was practicing N for notice, I intentionally, and that's the key, this is mindfulness with intention. I would intentionally stop at a certain part of the path, and I would look up and I would look out and I would look around, and I would just see, a bird that I didn't notice, or I would see the most beautiful color of a leaf. It's just these tiny little things. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was here the whole time.
I love that so much. And I used to do that with kids when I used to teach mindfulness in the classrooms. And I would have them look around and notice something they've never seen before. And it was our mindful seeing exercise. And they would all be very cocky. I've seen everything in here. I've been in this classroom all year. I've seen everything. And I'm like, okay, look again. Right? As if for the first time.
Yeah.
And even the minutest of details, it's just a practice in awareness, right? It's a practice of how much are you paying attention? And my favorite response one of the kids gave was, we were doing this outside of their classroom on their porch, and the school was up on a hill, and it was beautiful. And she was in 5th grade and had been there since preschool. And do you know what she said? She said, I've never noticed the view.
Aww.
And I'm like, my first immediate thought was kind of judgment. Seriously, you've been driving up and down this hill for 6 years and you've never noticed? And I quickly let that judgment go. And my response was, well, now that you see it, you'll never not see it again.
Yep. And that's so true. We miss so much beauty that is around us in everyday life. And the beauty is in the small things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've loved talking to you today, and I think we'll have to have you on again so we can continue some more, because I'm sure.
Yes, I would love it. Thank you so much for spreading this message. It's so important and so powerful.
Well, and I love even just that simple of giving yourself a hug can produce the positive feel-good hormones in the brain. So that's something any of you can go do right now. You're feeling down, just you can be the own source of your own healing. And I love that you shared that. And
and if people want more information on that, that is not my creation. That is Peter Levine.
Okay.
So they can, look him up, and he calls it creating a container.
I love that. And how can people find you?
Oh, I would love to connect with anyone on social media, Instagram and Facebook, just ABCs of Happy. You can also go to my website, abcsofhappy.com. If you sign up for the newsletter that I send out, I'll give you a freebie on how to really integrate mindfulness into your everyday life. And then I have a private Facebook group that anyone can join if you're interested in mindfulness. And every month I post a free meditation on the letter of the ABCs of Happy that I personally have been practicing for the whole month. And I also offer
that group.
Yes, I would love for you to. And then I also do online meditation classes. So you can find all that information on my website.
Okay. I adore you. And we are just so aligned. So this has been such a fun conversation. Yes, Thank you so much. And I really appreciate all the wisdom that you've shared. And it's just such a fun conversation for me to have with someone who truly speaks the same language as me. Yeah. And I love that we're doing the same work through some different modalities, and yet the root of it is 100% the same. So it warms my heart to know that there's more and more people like you and I who are helping people who really need the tools. Right?
And just honestly encouraging people that change is possible. Healing is absolutely part of your journey. And I love the title of this podcast. I think just that in and of itself is so encouraging and inspiring.
Oh, you and I are so aligned. I always say change is possible. And the thing is, some people don't believe it. So I'll always say, and back to the word container, I will hold the space for you.
Yep.
And so thank you. I'm so glad to hear the feedback on the title of this podcast. I've got my business coach to help me think for my branding, but it really is so alignment with which I think what my intention is in doing this work in the world. So thank you again so much. And we'll definitely talk again soon. Bye.
Bye.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.